To the Boone Podcast. I'm Bret Boone, and today on the program, I'm joined by one of the greatest pitchers of all time. The 10-time All-Star, 5-time Cy Young Award winner, and a World Series champion. Back in the Kingdome days in Seattle, we were teammates. He's also a fellow Trojan. Ladies and gentlemen, Randy Johnson. Randy, thanks for coming on the program, man.
My pleasure, Booney. Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right. Spring training. I'm to get this out of the way. Stupid. I'm going to watch it a million times in the next probably 2 or 3 weeks. Hitting the bird. Give me the short version.
Short version, 2001 spring training down in Tucson. We were playing the San Francisco Giants, and the only reason it was even captured on camera was because our hitters requested a small little camcorder out there, and our camera guy put a camcorder out in center field. So I would be able to watch my pitching mechanics, and the hitters would be able to watch their, swings, if you will. And so it was running, and that's the only reason it was captured. It wasn't on TV. It was just a little camcorder that caught that. So the only people that would have been able to talk about it would have been the people that saw it. But it went viral, obviously, back when it got released. And after 22 years of Major League Baseball, that's the highlight of my career.
I'm thinking about all the ABs I've had in spring training. There were a lot. I don't remember even seeing a bird in my line of sight when a pitcher's. So he comes out of nowhere. You just hit it. And what are you thinking? Did you know right away it was a bird, or you think?
To be honest with you, I thought it was somebody just pulling a joke or something, because I'm focused. I make the pitch, and then all of a sudden, just something. It didn't register right away that it was a bird until Jeff Kent, who was on the on-deck circle, the ball got, propelled to him on the on-deck circle, and then he just kind of picked it up, and then it kind of registered. But initially when it happened, it was kind of like, wow, what did we just see? Everybody's oohing and on in the stands. And initially, at first, I thought maybe somebody threw something, from the dugout or whatever. I didn't know. But then to see what happened, what's the chances? What's the chances?
Zero. You're the only one I know.
Yeah, well, in baseball, anyways, from what I know, but on social media, every once in a while, someone will tag me, and they'll be playing golf and they'll be teeing off, and they'll hit a bird or something like that, and they'll go, "Hey, we just had a Randy Johnson moment."
Back to your Montreal days, by the time we were teammates, and for those of you listening to the Boone Podcast, watching the Boone Podcast, Randy and myself, I came up in 1992. We were teammates through 93. Then I moved on. Randy moved on eventually. The big unit. Now I'm sitting there thinking, when I was a kid just coming to the big leagues, you know how it is when you're a rookie. You don't know which way's up. You're just trying to stay in the big leagues. So I'm figuring somebody like Jay Buhner or Griffey named you the big unit. Not true. It was in Montreal, from what I heard.
Well, most people don't even know that I started a career before Seattle. A lot of people think I just started my career in Seattle, but I actually played 4 years of minor league baseball, rookie ball, A-ball, AA, and AAA in Montreal, and then eventually got called up in '88 to Montreal Olympic Stadium, and I made 4 starts in '88, and Tim Raines, who was my teammate at the time in '88, was taking batting practice, and I was kind of hovering around the batting cage, if you will, and he walked out of the batting cage, and the brim of his batting helmet hit the middle of my chest, and so he was looking up like 1.5 feet, and then he called me, "Wow, you're a big unit," and then after that, he just kind of, "Hey, what's up, unit?" And then it just kind of stuck with everybody. So
I think of that, and that's a similar Timmy Raines coming up to your navel. That's something like I would do. My challenges were coming up through the minor leagues, is especially when I was young in high school and college. The knock on me was, Bret might not be big enough. Well, you got the complete opposite. I had Richie Sexton on the show recently. And I talked to him about the challenge. He's a good friend of mine, but also a teammate. And I remember hitting BP with him. And I think, Richie, how nice would it be for me to have your leverage as far as hitting
Right.
balls in the ballpark? And he would look at me, he goes, yeah, Brett, but you don't have these arms that are a foot longer than yours. So much more can go wrong. We talked about things. I go to a concert with Richie. I'm standing on the box. He's sitting down, so the people behind him,
Yeah, no, I played with Richie here in Arizona. He's one of only a handful of people that hit a home run off the scoreboard in center field here at Chase Field.
Yeah, hit it off his face.
Right.
But how was it for you? Were there challenges for being
Well,
so
of course
tall?
there was. You're taller, like you're saying. About Richie. For me, I'm pitching,
Right.
and so I'm 60 feet 6 inches away. I'm trying to get a baseball over home plate in a strike zone the size of a shoebox, and in order to do that, you have to be consistent with your mechanics. Well, that was one thing that I wasn't early on. That's one thing why I went 4 years in the minor leagues. That's one reason why when I got to Seattle initially, I kind of struggled. I led the league in walks, and strikeouts. It's one reason why my pitch counts were so high, and I would only be in the fifth inning because I was walking 6-7 batters a game, because I couldn't repeat my mechanics. So eventually and inevitably, I realized how important mechanics were, and down the road, Anetta USC alumni Tom House, who was the pitching coach for the Texas Rangers at the time, and Nolan Ryan was on the team still. Tom asked me if I wanted to watch Nolan Ryan throw a bullpen to benefit me to understand the mechanics that would help me inevitably. And so seeing it firsthand was really beneficial. Then I had to incorporate it because I'd obviously been doing it incorrect most of my life, or wasn't able to repeat the proper mechanics, a majority of the time out there. And so I incorporated it, and that was in 92. And then in 93 in Seattle, that was my first really big year. I think I won 17 or 18 games, led the league in strikeouts. My walks went down. My ERA was down a little bit. And I was able to be a little bit more competitive because I was finding myself even or ahead in the count, not, behind in the count, 3-1, 3-0, or what have you. And the game was becoming a lot more fun for me because I was able to repeat these pitches, and I was able to go deeper in the game and become more competitive.
Yeah, and I got to, I played behind you for a year and a half, and I watched when you were just catching your stride. But I often wondered about it because I'm thinking, man, being that big, yeah, the advantage. And for years I'd faced you, and I hated facing you. By the way, for those who listen, Randy owned me. I think I got 2 hits off of Mike. However, I did take you deep in Tucson.
There you go.
If you remember it. How about this? We're in Tucson. We're in a spring training game. I hit a homer off Randy. He kind of looking at me. We were ex-teammates. And he goes, hey, Boone, that doesn't count. And I said, shit, it counts for me. It feels good because I haven't done too well off you in the regular season. But it's those angles. And not only were you throwing 100, and everybody I'm going to get into the actual pitcher that you really were. Everybody has this disillusion of Randy Johnson. He's 6'10", he throws 100. There's a lot more to it than that. When he's backdooring you with 2 seamers, we'll get to that later. But yeah, I just think you were so different than everybody else as a hitter because you're all arms and legs, and you're that close, and you're hitting your spots. It was a nightmare. But I want to talk to you about your photography. I'm really interested in this. And when you retired, you found another passion. I was with Junior at the All-Star game this year. He's taken it up. I don't know if he's reached out to you for advice. It seems like you were kind of someone like Randy's enjoying it. I want to get into it.
Yeah, several times he's called me. Yeah,
but it seems.
Actually, I studied photography, photojournalism at USC.
I heard that.
83, 84, 85, I studied photojournalism. So I worked for the Daily Trojan, as you know, the college newspaper there.
Yeah.
John Suhu. He's a famous LA photographer, the Los Angeles Dodgers photographer. He's been there for 30, 40 years now. He was he worked for the Daily Trojan and was ahead of all the photographers. And so basically, I would just walk around campus and he would give me an assignment. The greatest assignment I ever had was nobody wanted to do this, and that was go across the street from the USC campus, go over to the LA Coliseum and take pictures of the band The Who and The Clash. And they would use those pictures for the Daily Trojan as a concert review. And I still have some of those pictures, but it all started back then. And I learned how to develop film back then, a little bit more about photography. And then obviously in 85, I got drafted my junior year out of USC by Montreal, and then my minor league career started for 4 years. And really, the camera didn't really see much daylight then. I was just really trying to, get better at baseball and pitching. And then eventually, that short period of time that I got called up to Montreal was very brief. And then eventually in 89, I got traded to Seattle, and then my 10-year career in Seattle really started, and it was still a work in progress. Like I said, it wasn't, I got there in 89. It wasn't until 92 when I had that conversation with Tom House, Nolan Ryan. So, 1990, 91, and half of 92 was a lot of struggles, some highlights, if you will. I remember in 1990 in the Kingdom, I pitched my first no-hitter against the Detroit Tigers. But I also remember calling my dad on the landline in the training room there in Seattle, and he had already heard about it somehow, maybe on the news or whatever. And he goes, "Yeah, I saw you threw a no-hitter, but why'd you walk 6 or 7 batters?" So that's what I was talking about. It was just a lot of struggles early on because I couldn't repeat my mechanics. On days that I pitched well, I pitched great. And as an athlete, you just want to be able to repeat what you do, be competitive out there. And inevitably and eventually I was able to do that. But I took some lumps along the way and some humbling. But when I had that conversation and things got ironed out, it was a lot of fun because I was able to throw a little bit harder because now I was able to use all my body and go towards home plate. I wasn't falling off towards the mound. Things weren't perfect, but they were a lot better. And then when I started seeing some success, well, then I started watching some of the better pitchers at the time in the league, and understanding what pitching was really about. It's just not about throwing 100 miles out there, and it's really about getting ahead in the count and being able to offset the hitter's timing and, pitching according to their weaknesses. And so it was, that 10 years in Seattle, I had some really good years there, but it was really early on. It was really a learning process for me. And then when I left in 98 and went to Houston for 2 months, it then really took off. I made 11 starts in Houston, and I went 10-1 with the 1 ERA. And then after the season was over, I became a free agent, and I was talking to the Dodgers, the Angels, the Texas Rangers, and then obviously the Arizona Diamondbacks. And I ended up playing here in Arizona, obviously, for about 6 years. And then during that run, we won a World Series, and I won 4 straight Cy Youngs. But, what most people probably would have thought that, also in 1996, I had back surgery in Seattle, and I was in my 30s then, but I was really playing catch up. Everybody says you were, you took a long time to finally get to where you wanted to be, and they're right. I was a late bloomer, if you will. But I think that's because I didn't have that conversation with Nolan. I didn't understand mechanics. I wouldn't have even pitched that long as I did had I not had that conversation, because that was really educational. And from that point on, when I had better mechanics, I saw the results between the lines. And then outside the lines, I was starting to figure, what can I do to be better and to recover faster. So, then I started, eating a little bit better, working out a little bit harder, doing more functional exercises. Back then I was throwing 130, 140 pitches a game. It's kind of unheard of now, but in our generation, the game was a lot different then. And so I realized after having back surgery one time in Seattle, how important your core is. It's important for whether you play golf or swinging a baseball bat or pitching at 6'10" and bending over 130, 140 times. Well, when that got injured, I finally met a person here in Arizona, my trainer, and he inevitably became my trainer for the rest of my career. He told me all about how important core strength is. And the things that I was doing then in 96, people were kind of looking at me in Seattle like, I was on the styrofoam roller or on the ball doing core exercises, and it just was kind of unheard of then, to be doing all that kind of stuff. And now everybody's doing it.
You bring up an interesting point, and we all do. And as a hitter, man, you talk about your pitching journey and Nolan being a big part of that. My hitting journey, I remember as a young player, I was just trying to make it. I just wanted to establish myself as a player.
Right.
Time goes on. I learned things as I went. Edgar was a big guy for me when I went back to Seattle the second time. And the thought process that we went through, how to think through the at-bat. Man, I wish I'd have had that 5 years earlier, but at least I got it for the last 5 years of my career. There's a lot of truth to that on the pitching side as well on the hitting side. But you mentioned, I'm looking through your numbers, and it was 200 plus innings in your heyday was like a joke. Like, of course we're going to get to 200 innings.
Right.
And, I understand the game's different today. It's built for the bullpen. They put a lot of resources in the bullpen, which in our day they didn't. It was all in the starting pitching. But I just wonder, I just sit there for a guy like you that pitched so many innings year in and year out to look at the modern day player and go, how can you not go 200 innings? There's a way to train for that doesn't really make it a detriment long term. It's been done before.
Yeah.
Just brief thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, I do radio and TV occasionally here in Arizona for the Diamondbacks, and I've talked to people about it, and it's just not where the game is today. But as a pitcher that played, 26 years, 22 in the majors, 4 in the minor leagues, it's all I knew. It's all I wanted to do was go as deep in the game as I could. It wasn't unheard of to throw 130, 140 pitches, I might have 15 strikeouts in a game, and I might have a high pitch count, but I always thought that's the starting pitcher's job, to go as long and as far as he can on that day, and then 5 days later do it again. And the fact that organizations today don't ask their starting pitcher to do the same things that my generation and generations before me were doing, that they tend to ask the bullpen to pick up the slack, if you will. I just don't understand that. And this is the biggest thing, the biggest problem I have with it is that I don't think that pitchers today will ever realize how good they could have been if they were getting those extra 2 or 3 innings per start. Because now you're not put out there. We played for Lou Piniella.
Right.
And after a while, when I was pitching really good up there and he became the manager, we kind of talked, and he said, if you just be honest with me and you tell me when you want to come out, then I'm never going to ask you if you want to come out. Just be on that. But that came with, that was a lot of respect that he had for me, but it came because I was proving that I was capable of doing that there for that team at the time. And I think that pitching all those extra pitches in a game, going through some tight situations and getting out of them, not all the time, but you learn when you did the mistakes you did, so you don't repeat those. But in today's game, I don't think pitchers mentally or physically will grow as much as they could if they're taken out of a situation and a bullpen pitcher's being brought in to try to bail them out.
I look at the game, and let's. There's a few exceptions. Older pitchers in the game. A Justin Verlander, for example. I think Verlander still has the mindset that I'm the starting pitcher and I'm going 9. Doesn't mean he's going to go 9. In the modern day game, the organizations aren't probably going to let you go 9 unless it's one of those immaculate low pitch count.
Sure.
But I think he still has the mindset. I think the great ones, and they have to be older, still have the mindset of when I take the ball, I'm going 7, 8, 9 innings. Doesn't mean they're going to, but the mindset's there. I think for the modern day player, and it's not to their, I don't think it's their fault. I think it's the culture. I think it's how they're brought up. I think they're told, listen, we want you to dominate for 5 innings. That becomes the mindset. Sure. And I think that's part of the problem is the young pitchers today go, hey, I got my 5 innings in. Back in our day, 5 innings, and I say, unit, give me the ball. You're going to look at me like I'm crazy. Like,
I was just getting warmed up then.
Right. So it's a mindset versus anything else.
The generation that's still playing in today's game, like you're talking about, the Verlanders, the Max Scherzers, the Kershaws, and I'm probably missing a few, but that generation of players that have 10 to 15 years under their belt, most of those pitchers were rookies when I was getting towards the end of my career. So they saw what was happening and they wanted to do that. And they earned the right to do that based on the pitcher that they were. But as the game has gone on, they've gotten older. That's still their mindset. And it was still my mindset at age 46, the year I retired. I still wanted to go out and pitch 7 or 8 innings, but physically, I may not be able to do that, but that didn't mean it wasn't my mindset. But the pitchers of this generation, it may even start in the minor leagues. That they're not trained to go 6, 7 innings, so they're not as durable. And their mindset is just to pitch 5 or 6 innings, and then you've done your job, and then the bullpen comes in. But it all starts in the minor leagues. And like you said, it's not their fault. It's just the organization's thought process. All 30 teams think that same way. But the biggest problem I have, like I've already said, was you get a pitcher and he's borderline superstar, over the next 10 years because he has the ability and the mindset to go out there and succeed by pitching 2 more innings and getting and throwing 10 more pitches. You have to have the mindset to really dig down deep and get out of that inning, and, it's a physical thing. It's a mental thing. And you grow that way. And I grew that way in Seattle. And the teams that I played for after Seattle, and even while I was in Seattle, paid the dividends because I learned how to do that, through failing and through succeeding. But I was given the opportunity, like a lot of other pitchers, if you're capable of going out there and continuing to do something, they're going to let you do it. In today's game, the leash is a little shorter and you don't get that opportunity. And I just think because you're not allowing a pitcher to go out there and extend himself, he's not doing anything that, pitchers haven't done for 100 years before him. And I just think you're handcuffing him and he'll never know how many innings he could have thrown in a game or in a year or how good he could have been. And I just think that I truly feel that. And that's based on experience. If I had never gotten that opportunity to pitch for Lou and go out there and, Lou say, well, you right now are better than anybody I got out in the bullpen, so just stay out there and get it done, and that's the mindset. And when a manager tells you that, I would run through a brick wall for Lou because he gave me that opportunity to grow as a pitcher. And And there was no other manager that I played for that I wanted to win for more, because he was the first manager that really allowed me to grow as a pitcher. And had I not grown and had that conversation with Nolan, my career would have been shorter, my numbers wouldn't have been as good, and my mindset to want to play longer, to do the things that I would have to do to play longer, condition and work harder, and then eventually, not look for strikeouts, because you really kind of, taxed your arm and your body as I got older. But I got smarter as time went on, and but there's a lot of steps that I took that got me where I was. Manager, that I played for that would allow me to go out there and do that. A conversation with Nolan, a trainer that would kind of help me get to where I need to be and have me do the right exercises that are simulating what I'm doing out on the mound, not like pumping, 250 pounds on bench press. It doesn't do anything for you, but doing functional exercises that would allow me to go out there and throw 130 pitches in a game, throw 230, 240 innings in a season. I just feel like it's just like hitting, you grow as a hitter through failure and succeeding. And if you have the ability to pick the mindset of someone like Edgar, well, I did too, and I would talk to him, hey, in this situation, what are you looking for, as a pitcher, and you benefit a lot more as a hitter, but talking to him and then talking to other hitters who you probably became friends with, or watching them, watching Greg Maddux. Now, I don't have that kind of stuff, but watching how and why he was so successful, I can still try to, in my own way, I can still try to incorporate that. I didn't throw 95 to 100, towards the end of my career. So now I'm throwing a two-seamer, a changeup a little bit more, and pitching to contact and wanting to get a double play instead of striking out the side, which I couldn't do anymore. So I was morphing into a different pitcher because I, went to 35, and the last year of my career was 46. I'm not the same pitcher. I have to understand that and pitch accordingly. And a smart pitcher in today's game, if they're lucky enough to pitch 10, 15 years, they'll understand that early on, especially if they're throwing 95 to 100, they realize that they're not going to be able to do that forever. So now you got to, later in your career, be a little bit smarter, throw some two-seamers, throw changeups, throw a little bit more to contact, and don't be afraid, of having the hitter put the ball in play. That's what your defense is out there for.
I do remember when I first, that 92, 93, and I remember you in particularly, you'd come around to the hitters, and you always had days that you weren't pitching, you'd always have questions for us. Like,
well, go ahead.
You are in the process of learning your craft. All right, what are the hitters thinking when I'm out there? And that makes perfect sense. Now, I faced you. Now you left. I left Seattle. You left Seattle. We faced each other a few times throughout our career. The question I always get: what was it like to face Randy? I said, well, it was a pain in the ass. You'd look at my stats. I didn't do too well off him. I said, but here's the misnomer out there: 6'10", throws 100. That must be really tough. I said, you know what? If he was 6'10" and he just threw 100, I can handle that. That doesn't bother me, the 100.
Right.
But it's the way Randy pitched, especially as he went on through his career. He wasn't a thrower. He was a pitcher. I'd get to 2-0 and I'd be thinking, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to throw me a heater down the middle.
Right.
You used to front door me with that two-seamer, and it would drive me crazy because I'd pull back and I'd think that's a ball, and I'd look on the tape and that son of a bitch would come back, a la like a Maddux would do.
Right.
That 2-0 backdoor, when you got 100 in your back pocket, but you put in my mind as the hitter, but I might flip you that slider for a strike right here. That's what truly pitching's all about. And that's why I tell people, I said, Randy wasn't just out there hucking it, man. I said, Randy, especially veteran Randy, honed in Randy, he was pitching. And now he's got the 100 on top of that. That's what made you so dominant.
From about 93 on, from about 93 on is when I really started developing into a pitcher, watching more pitchers, talking to more hitters, understanding what was making me successful. But a lot of hitters, also had my number. And, you talk to hitters today, or even when I was towards, the end of my career, and, you find out how predictable I was in certain ways, everything, and then I find out through hitters, hey, you're fanning your glove on a breaking ball, you're squeezing your glove on a fastball, So, I learned over time that not everything was perfect, but whatever I was doing, to develop and become a better pitcher was working. But I still had things that, were for a good hitter could see and benefit from, whether it was tipping pitches in the middle or late of my career, like I said, or starting hitter off with the two-seamer down and away. And early in my career, everything was into a right-handed hitter. My breaking ball is obviously down and into a right-handed hitter, and I didn't start throwing a four-seamer or a two-seamer down and away to hitters until a little bit later in my career. So my fastballs were usually into a right-handed hitter, and then my breaking ball was down in. So, talking to hitters, they said, yeah, you were kind of predictable early in your career because everything was into me. So I never had to look away, and that made sense. And so if I would have had this information, well, then I would have been able to change. But, over time, I started understanding that myself. And that was simply because I was getting older. I was trying to pitch to a little bit more soft contact, if you will. That's why I developed that two-seamer. And every once in a while, if I'd get ahead in the count 1-2, 2-2, 0-2, then I'd throw that four-seamer down and away instead of in, because now they might be looking for a breaking ball in, down and in, and now I freeze them with a four-seamer down and away. So it took time to develop and understand and not pitch in patterns. But early on, I think, to some degree, most hitters say that just about every pitcher kind of does something that if you watch them long enough will kind of tip their pitch. But I definitely know I was doing it because as soon as they told me what I did, I went back and looked at film, and sure enough, I would squeeze my glove on a fastball because I was thinking power, and a hitter could see my glove kind of folded, and then my hand would be grip the ball a little bit different, and I wasn't thinking as much power on my breaking ball, and my glove would be fanned open. So they could see that. I mean, Chipper Jones at the Hall of Fame, he had great numbers off me. I think he's got the most home runs off me. And he said, yeah, we had your pitches. And, when he said what I was doing, then I would go talk to Cal Ripken, and he goes, oh, yeah, Robbie Alomar would sit in the dugout and would tell everybody what you were doing. Some people wanted to know that, some people didn't. But, then I talked to Sandy Koufax and people like that, and they go, you know what? Everybody had my pitches too. You make your pitches and you do what you do, and because it's hard to change things. It was hard for me inevitably to have better mechanics, but inevitably it worked. And then that was something that I didn't learn until a little bit later in my career. As I got a little bit older, I just saw hitters spit on my breaking ball and they wouldn't even swing at it. And I'm going, what's going on here? It's like normally I would get swings. They would screw themselves in the ground. And that's because normally I didn't throw that, get me over slider. It was 1-2, 0-2. I was trying to bury it on their back foot and they would see that it was coming and they wouldn't even swing at it. So I learned a lot of things over time, and those things would have been beneficial had I known, but it also made the game, I guess, in some way, a little bit more challenging for me.
I'll tell you, those guys, and there are a handful. Every team I was ever on, there was always a few guys that was kind of their job. They're at the top step and they're picking pitches. Boone, you want to know the pitches? Well, hell yeah, if you could get them to me. Now, everybody didn't tip, and I'm sure you had instances where you were tipping, you made an adjustment. Up now, I don't have Randy's pitches anymore. He's made an adjustment, and
Right,
that's
right.
the cat. That's the cat and mouse in the game. I got a few more, and I'll let you go.
All right.
Last year, your Diamondbacks, and you still in Arizona right now?
Yeah, I'm speaking from Arizona.
You won a World Series 2001. I'm a little envious. That was supposed to be our Mariners year. We won all those games. We didn't end up. Yankees ended up beating us going to Arizona. You were MVP of the World Series that year. This past year, they went back. Pretty cool seeing the city of Arizona kind of perk up because it's been a long time since the Diamondbacks been in a World
Yeah,
Series.
there's been a lot of growing pains. There's been some good teams here, and they've done some nice things. But to go to the World Series is what all 30 teams shoot for in spring training, and it's not to say that this team wasn't shooting for that. But realistically, I think it was just more about developing players that were coming up from the minor leagues to see if they could handle the job. Our payroll wasn't that high. And for whatever reason, things really clicked. The team struggled early on, early in the year, and then the second half of the season they picked things up, and the rotation got a little bit stronger, and Corbin Carroll, our young superstar on the team, really electrified the fans and inspired his teammates, I think, and Gurriel, who plays out in left field. He's a really good hitter, and there was just enough veteran players on the team that to kind of overlook the young kids. But inevitably, towards the end of the season, the team was on a roll, and the Diamondbacks had to play all of their playoff games on the road. They had to go to Milwaukee, and they swept Milwaukee. And then during this whole time, the Dodgers were resting for a week or what have you. And after the Diamondbacks beat Milwaukee, well, then they went to L.A. and they beat Kershaw there, and they came home. And next thing you know, we're beating the Dodgers. And so when you're doing that and you're kind of the underdog, I mean, I think Milwaukee won the Central, if I'm not mistaken. So they beat Milwaukee, who won the Central, or at least finished second. I can't remember if they won or finished second in the Central last year. And then they beat the Dodgers. Now that's just more momentum, more confidence, and you know how well that works. The team never took a break. They were playing, and it was just like, they were steamrolling. Like the Dodgers took that long break after, and they had like a bye week, if you will. They didn't have to play in the playoffs for a while until we played them. And next thing you know, the Diamondbacks have everything rolling. The pitchers are pitching well. Brandon Paft was the number 3 starter on the team. And he didn't have a great year numbers-wise, but when he was asked to go out and do what he did it really well. And that was a big shot in the rotation behind the 2 big guys that we had here. I suspect that this year will be a lot of fun to watch now that the team has grown. But I also realize that the Dodgers have gotten better. They've gone out and have done what they do. They got Shohei Ohtani, and then they got the left-handed pitcher. I believe he's left-handed, if I'm not mistaken, from Tampa Bay. They also signed another Japanese.
Glass now.
Yeah,
Last out from Tampa Bay, and then Matsumoto. No,
Yes, the kid from Japan. So they've just reloaded, and then they still have pitchers coming back that were hurt last year. Bueller. Dustin May, big redheaded kid that throws 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then they got Kershaw there that is really probably in a perfect situation now with all this youth ahead of him. He can pitch a little bit more comfortably in a number 4, number 5 spot. So I think the Diamondbacks, after having the success that they had last year, they still have confidence. Yesterday was the first day of pitchers and catchers, and most of the team is here. Most of the position players are even 90%. They said are here. I would suspect that the National League West, will be the best division in all of baseball, and I say that because you got San Diego, who's got a lot of talent there, and eventually things will get hopefully worked out down there. And then Bob Melvin went from San Diego to San Francisco. He'll get that team competing well. And then you got the Dodgers, and then you got the Diamondbacks. So you got 4 of the, 5 teams, 6 teams in the NL West that are really competitive. And if nothing else, you're going to have at least 3 in the very end, which will be probably the Diamondbacks, the Dodgers, and either San Francisco or San Diego.
I think the coolest part last year watching the Diamondbacks down the stretch is nobody believed it, and they counted them out every single series.
Yeah.
And all they did is keep winning. I think that core group of players coming back this season, the amount of confidence that they obtained through that run they just went through is immeasurable. And I think going forward in their careers, anytime there's doubt, because let's face it, Ray, we play a game that, man, you better not have a fragile ego, because you will get humbled time after time after time. And to have those experiences like the Diamondbacks did last year, and to overcome everybody, all the naysayers saying you got no chance each and every series, they're a couple games away from winning the World Series. And
Absolutely.
I think going forward, this group of guys, what that experience they got going forward, I think it's going to be nothing but great. I'm a believer now. I wouldn't count the Diamondbacks. I think they've proved themselves this offseason. And I think with their mindset now, they're a very dangerous organization. I think it's going to be a fun year for you guys over there in the desert.
And I think Arizona will just go about their business like they always have. It's the desert, and everybody kind of focuses on the West Coast, the Dodgers, San Diego, and San Francisco, and everybody will go about their business. And we'll see where the teams are at All-Star break. But I think a majority of the players that really make this team what they are young. And they came up via trades, drafts, and they played a little bit in the minor leagues, and they developed them down there the Diamondback way, and they brought them up, and now they're all here, and they're all clicking. They're all playing well together. And I think the sooner you can do that with your teammates at an early age, that's why I always thought that Seattle was in the same boat then, with Omar and Junior, Edgar, Jay, myself, in the early 90s. That was a really talented team, and you expected more from all of that. But, we didn't have enough pitching to go along with the offense that we had. But that team was really good, and I think anybody and everybody would probably say, yeah, that team didn't do as much as we thought with the amount of talent that was on that team. But that just goes to show you that you can be strong in offense, but if you're weak in pitching, I can't go out there and pitch every day. You need people that go out there and keep you in the game. And here in Arizona, we got 3 starters that can do that. And just about every team, is going to have or need at least 2 solid pitchers, and then if not a third, especially when you're playing in 7-game playoffs and you're turning, And then you need a strong bullpen too, because after 5-6 innings, everything goes through the bullpen. And then it's all about matchups and all that, and you burn through your bullpen pretty easily too through the playoffs.
Yeah, and the playoff format, they got 12 teams, and I'm a purist at heart. I like to keep the game as much the same as it always is, but I understand going forward there are tweaks and things they're going to make. When they first said 12 teams, I thought that's too many teams to make the playoffs.
Right.
Or like the NBA, but after watching it, it's like this is what fans want. This is what keeps baseball in the forefront.
Well, it's all about the fans. It's
yeah.
It's all about the fans, and rightfully so. They're the ones that put the players on the field and pay the players. Inevitably, you want to have a chance to have your team in the playoffs, and if they're not winning the division, then maybe they can be, the other wild card team, and people have won this World Series being a wild card team, so. As well as I do, you just need to get to the playoffs, and then anything can happen after that. And you saw that firsthand with the Diamondbacks.
Without a doubt. Well, Randy, I appreciate you taking the time out today. Last question for you. Randy Johnson, what do you want to be remembered for when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I never really thought about that, but I guess I guess, just that I worked hard and I adapted to the game. I took my lumps early on and I learned, but I developed along the way based on asking questions and watching, other pitchers that were successful at the time. And then as I got successful, here in Arizona, I tried to, if someone had a question, I like to think that I made them better, whether they were just watching me go about my business, the day after I pitched, what I was doing in the weight room, or how I went about my game between the lines, or sitting down and just talking pitching. I know having Kurt Schilling as my teammate for a couple of years here, he was pretty complimentary, and when he got here to Arizona, he never had someone push him. And so, I was doing those things even before he got here. I was pitching and had high pitch counts and had high, innings towards the end of the year. And I think that he was able to see what I was doing every fifth day, and then he kind of got to the next level too. Not necessarily by doing everything that I did in the weight room or those kind of things, but it was more of a mindset to him, maybe, and then he and myself, it really became a lot of fun. But I think the bottom line is, being remembered is someone's opinion of who that person was. I guess just being a great competitor and trying to do my best for my teammates and going at times above and beyond. And that started in Seattle in '95. Pitching Game 3 against the Yankees when I couldn't pitch any sooner because I pitched that one game playoff, and then we celebrated, went to New York. We came back down 0-2. I pitched Game 3. And then I came out of the bullpen, and, I was willing to do whatever I had to do for my teammates because I think they would do the same, whether it was a hit or whatever. And then I did it here in Arizona. I pitched, 230 innings during the regular season, and then pitched all postseason in 2001. And I pitched Games 2 and Game 6. And in Game 6, I pitched 7 innings. And then the manager asked, if I take you out now, will you be available for the bullpen tomorrow night? And I go, I guess. I by that time I had about 270 innings with everything accumulative. But, I didn't mind. And I think anybody would be willing to do that. And so, being put in that situation, it was more about, trying to do whatever I could to help the team win. And so I was always, there was a couple of times, it started in Seattle and then in Arizona here, but I was always willing to do that for my teammates because I know they were going above and beyond in some way too. And really that's what it takes to win a championship, or sometimes for someone to be seeing you and they just need to see that. And then they want to try to do that, and get to the next level. Kind of like what Kurt Schilling did, when he joined me here in Arizona.
Yeah, that 1-2 combo, and I watch it now, Randy. I see the postseason, and I just think, all right, if if Verlander, just pick him just as a hypothetical. If he's going game one, he's got to be able to go game four and game seven. You get three out of him, and it always goes back to, well, that's what probably Randy and Schilling would have done in 01. They go
Right.
game one, game four, game two, and you're getting the most innings out, and it just doesn't happen that way anymore. I don't know if we'll ever see that type of Bumgardner when they won the World Series
Right.
with the San Francisco Giants. I think that's what it's all about. And like you said, how many times do you really get that opportunity to win a World Series? Man,
Yeah.
they're far and few between. And the fact that you had that, that thought process of, hey, I'm here, I got to do what I can do. This might be my only chance to win it.
Right.
I just
Exactly.
wish we'd get back to that mindset. People tell me all the time, I got to go to one World Series with the Braves in '99. We got whooped by the Yankees. And I thought, I'll be back. I'll have plenty more
Yeah.
opportunities.
No,
What
it's
comes
not
and
that
goes.
easy, man.
It's
Yeah.
not,
For whatever
it's one of the
reason,
hardest things to do in sports.
it really is.
Some guys are blessed, and some of the greatest players we both played with, Griffey, never even got to a World Series. One of the
Right.
greatest players I've ever been around. So
Right. Yeah.
it's a pretty darn special thing. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Randy. Best of luck over there in Arizona. I'll be checking you out on some of the games. For those of you watching the Boone podcast now on YouTube or listening, I appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you next time.